walking down these lonely roads. Someday we're gonna get somewhere, we're gonna find ourselves a home. So let's drink another bottle, smoke another cigarette. We're gonna get so fucking wasted, so tonight we can't forget that we're living on the streets. We're flying signs, we're collecting our quarters and our nickels and dimes. This is who we are, this is who we're gonna be. This is how we live our lives, so fucked up and free, fucked up and free. I was in Vancouver. I ended up, I was gonna tell you this, kind of how I ended up getting like fucked up on, I'll just be flat out with it. When I got fucked up on fentanyl, because Vancouver has a really bad problem out there, right? And when I was on tour, I'd actually found out that my friend Cam was struggling with that stuff. And I was like, oh, I was so angry. I was like, why would he do that? I would have never done that. Like, I was the last guy in the world to go out and want to do that stuff, you know? Like, it just wasn't, like, I like doing acid and mushrooms and stuff, but I never thought in a million years. And when I found out what Cam was doing, I got really mad and upset. And then what ended up happening was one time, I think it was on M or something like that. It was on some upper, and we went on a trip to go pick up some weed, and something just changed in my brain. And I just said, you know what, man? I'm never going to give you hard love again. I'm never going to give you tough love again. I'm from here on out, it's only going to be soft love. I don't care. I don't want to lose you as a friend. I don't want you to die one day, and then for me to be like, shit, I cold shouldered him. You know, I was like, no, I'm going to I'm just gonna be there for my friend when I can, you know. I'm not, and I told him, man, if you're withdrawing, you can come to my room, you can scream, you can punch, you can do whatever you need to do. If you need someone to just scream at, I'll fucking stand here and you can scream at me and tell me how it's all my fault. I don't care. I will do whatever it takes to get you through this. He struggled, and then I was having trouble living in the house, because in that house there was, I think at one point where it was 16 people and 18 people. There was so many people, and there was 6 dogs or something like that. There was a lot. It was for a 4-bedroom plus basement. It was crazy. And don't get me wrong, Vancouver, we were talking about how it's crazy expensive for rent. I paid the same price in Vancouver that I did in Guelph, because of the fact that technically in some ways I paid less. At one point we got down to $380 because of how many people we had on the couch. And everybody would pay $200 to live on the couch, and that was Cam. Cam moved out of his room to live on the couch for $200 because he didn't care about having a room, and I was like, cool, whatever, that works, more money in the house kind of thing. So it started to wear on me, and it really started to wear on me, and I started, I admit, I got a bit aggressive at times, because I was just having a lot of trouble coping with, my room was beside the bathroom, and the hinge on the bathroom was kind of off, so every time somebody would go to the bathroom, it would slam the door right beside my bed. On the other side of the wall from the bathroom is my bed, so I'm going crazy because people are slamming this fucking door all the time. It started to wear on me, and I learned 2 things, because during the relationship I had a couple breakdowns, and I learned that I have borderline personality disorder, and that I have I have a lot of trouble when I don't sleep. If I don't sleep, I'm a mess, and it took me a while to really learn that the lack of sleep was causing a lot more issues than wanted to admit, because it's not easy. You want to be oh, I'm tough, I can do any drug in the world, nothing can beat me, or nothing can get me, it's you fall and you just want to be able to get right back up again, but you can't always, and sometimes you don't really, I find, at least for me, I didn't really figure it out until not too long ago, that you really got to take care of yourself. Everybody always says oh, you got to take care of yourself, But being young and dumb, you're oh, whatever, I'm just gonna keep, I'll have orange juice and beer for breakfast, that's not a healthy, Brass monkeys, fuck, I used to wake up and drink those all the time. Now if I was caught dead doing that, I'd be asleep by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that lifestyle started to wear on me, and then the drugs too, because there was a lot of drugs in that house, and I wasn't doing drugs, and I bought a PS4 for Christmas so I could cut back on drinking, and there's a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, and it just wears on you when you're trying to be sober in a house full of addicts. It gets you,
and I was breaking down a lot, and I was having troubles, and you know, my ex Joe, she left, and when she left, because when you have borderline personality disorder, you get really attached to people. So the codependency and attachment issues and stuff like that just spiraled me out of control, like out of full blown control, worst breakup ever kind of thing. And what ended up happening was in her past relationship, she had when they had broken up, all of his friends stayed on his side, and they didn't. They were like, "Oh, whatever. You guys broke up. I'm gonna stay friends with him instead of you." So in my opinion, she was like, "I'm not gonna let this happen again." So because we had met all these people together, right, in Vancouver, a lot of my friends were her friends, and she was also the, what do you call it, like the financier of the house. She was the one that kept control of all the money in the house, right? So everybody gave her the rent. Everybody, if you were late on rent, it was her you had to go talk to and stuff like that. And I know that stressed her out and stuff like that. I know that wore on her a bit, but at the same time too, it did give her a little bit more, when people were like, do they want to keep me or her? I understand in a lot of ways, in some ways, why they wanted to keep her over me, but she made it clear, like, you got to go. And I was like, what? Like, where am I going to go? I don't know where to go. Like, well, you're homeless. You've been homeless before. Good luck. And I'm like, shit. Like, so I'll be blunt. Like, she was really rough when it came to that. She was not super, what's the word, forgiving in some ways, like, and we had our fights, but, it takes two to tango, right? So there's times, like where that happened. And then when money becomes an issue, that's another issue, you know what I mean? Like,
Complicates things really.
and that was the thing too, like the money issues too made things really complicated, because like I had said, I borrowed some money from her mom for the vehicle, and then she was like, you owe me for that, and I'm like, well, you have to sell the vehicle, blah blah blah, I'm going to pay that back, blah blah, and like just a bunch of technical complicated drama ended up like getting really in between us. And I was still super in love with her, so like instead of paying her back, I was just trying to like buy her with gifts, like I was always trying to do that. And I learned after, like, that's not the way to approach things, not the way you want to do things. But I was doing a lot of those like really kind of desperate things that people do when they're trying to get somebody back, and that only made things worse. And then because of that, everybody could see in that house that I was breaking down, and I wasn't doing good, and nobody wants to live with somebody who's fucking as bad as I was. Like, I was a mess. So like it wears on people. And then what ended up happening, like, I had to leave, blah blah. Like, in some ways I have some hard feelings, in other ways I don't. Like, certain people I do, some people I don't. I feel like those that I don't like genuinely don't like me, or they know that, vice versa. But other people I still have a lot of respect for, that I live with. And living there, like, after or just before I had gotten kicked out, me and you were talking about this, about how wrestling had helped me get sober a bit. What ended up happening was Cam was doing, like, out there they call fentanyl down. Like, it's like, I don't know, like, yeah, they just call it down. So bear with me, I use that term a lot, down, when I'm like talking about fentanyl. Some people are like, oh, I'll call it fentanyl, and I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna call it what I knew it as, because when I was doing it, I wasn't calling my dealer being like, yo, I need some fentanyl. I was calling them being like, yo, I need some down. So I got into that because I was kind of looking for something that she didn't do. Like, she wasn't doing it at the time. So I was like, if I do this, I can do it. It's something that I can do with my friends that she doesn't do, that, like, and then also in a weird kind of way, like, I think I was doing it for people to feel not bad for me, but for people to have a little bit more sympathy for me. Like, I feel like I was kind of trying to do that, like, oh, well, they treat them with all that, like, they treat these people that way, like, they'd never let them use a loan, so, how come they are letting me use a loan, the kind of thing. I was trying to, like, kind of gain sympathy in that sense. But then, like, I was doing it also too because it was helping me get away from the pain, of the breakup. And what ended up happening was, one day I woke up and it was like a fish hook in the mouth, like, it got me, and I was like, oh, fuck, I was screaming, I was like pain, toss and turn. Cam came in the room. He's like, "What's going on, man?" And he's like, "I was like, oh, dude, I'm dying." He's like, "Yep, you're in withdrawal. It's your first taste." And I was like, "Go fucking get me, like, go get it now. Like, here, fucking take money. Like, I don't care. Like, who can, like, what do I got to do? Who fucking owes me money? Like, what do I got to do?" Because at that point, I was like, fuck, I don't want to feel that anymore. I do not want to feel that pain. So I ended up going down that, like, kind of rabbit hole, because then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to stop this. And then I kind of weaned off a little bit, and I wasn't in it long enough to be, like, full on hooked. Like, I was able to get myself out a bit. But then I think, like, I don't know, me and Joe, we were broken up, and she had gone away, and I just, for some reason, she had gone away for the weekend or something like that, and I was like, fuck it, like, no one's around, no one's home, I'm just going to do a bunch of down and sit in my room and listen to some records and shit. So, and the thing, too, I should say, I never used a needle. I only ever smoked it, because I knew a lot of people that were using needles, and they all said, like, once you do this, you'll never come home from it. You'll never stop. It'll never be the same. So I always wanted to give myself that, like, I didn't want to do that to myself, because I just wanted something to help me cope, to get through, I just wanted something to help me with this breakup, going through this issue. So I didn't want to be in it full time. And then getting myself kind of wrapped up into it, what ended up happening, I was an addict when I got kicked out. And then I had this sign that, like, pretty much the sign defined exactly what I was going through at that point. It said homeless, hungry, and heartbroken. It stuck. So essentially, I guess, yeah, like, I was homeless. I was, like, I don't know, 10 feet away from my house almost. And I spent a lot of the time busking, and a lot of time, like, I met a lot of people through that. And there was a lot of nice people. Oh my God, when you are homeless, like, so many people just out of nowhere, from the goodness of their heart. And, I was so blessed with some of the people that I met, and just some of the people that allowed me to, like, whether they gave me money, or whether they gave me food, or whether they got me to, like, the next day, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they brought me, like, I don't know, like, soap or some shit. I don't know, like, with, socks. Socks is a good one. But through addiction and stuff, a lot of people really are there for you. Like, with that sign, it really got a lot of people's heartstrings. And people would come up and say to me, like, it's not the fact that you're homeless that I'm going to give you money, or I'm going to care. It's the fact that you're heartbroken. Because, I've never been homeless before, but I definitely have been heartbroken, and I don't know what it's like to be homeless.
It's just something, like, somebody else can relate to, even though they've never been in that situation, but they have had their heart broken. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that connected a lot of people, because a lot of people, when they saw that, they were like, they saw a little bit of themselves inside of me, where it was a little bit harder to do when you're just seeing a homeless sign, right? That really helped touch, like, the heartstrings of the people. And I will say, like, living, when I was in Vancouver, there's New West, which is just outside of Burnaby, and the community there, I will say, like, I was so blessed, because they just did so much for me. And I was busking at the spot where there's two places. On one side of the road was this, like, kind of strip mall, and it was, like, owned by some company or whatever. And then on the other side was another kind of a strip mall, but less, like, it wasn't, like, owned by one big company. There was, like, a Burger King. Well, they built a Burger King there. There was a Tim Hortons. There was, like, a liquor store, like, I don't know, fucking hair salon or some shit like that, a bank. So it was, like, on one side it was, like, for lack of better words, it wasn't owned by, like, a big corporation kind of thing, or a big company. And then the other side was, and the other side happened to have a security guard that I didn't get along with. So this security guard and I fought all fucking summer. While I'm homeless, I'm fucking, every day I have to put up with this asshole. So I'm a homeless junkie, and I'm fucking trying to get my fix, and this asshole comes up to me and is like, "You gotta leave now." I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? I gotta leave?" Like, dude, no, I don't want to leave. And he's like, well, and he's like a tough guy, so he's like trying to fucking scare me. I'm like, dude, you don't scare me. Like, you're not gonna do anything to me, blah blah. So this banter, and I'm like, whatever. He's like, I'm gonna call the cops. I'm like, fine, whatever. I don't want the cops to fucking figure out I'm like doing drugs and shit. So I don't want any police attention, right? So, just being like paranoid. You don't want to be like well known or anything like that in that regard, right? I didn't want them knowing my name and shit. But then one day, the guy fucking. What I started doing was I started going on this like I found this one spot, like it's where they put like newspapers and stuff. Like when you go to buy like a newspaper on the side of the street, that's not owned by anyone. That's public. That's like city property. Like that, like you can have like a mall has their sidewalk, and there is like two, what do you call it? Like two tile, like cement tile looking things, and then there's like a bit more cement, and on that cement spot there's like the newspaper thing, the newspaper stands, and on that newspaper stand, because it's owned by the city, the mall can't give me shit for it. So I start standing there and busking, because I've already at this point outside this McDonald's, I've built like people that know I'm going to be there, and sometimes just because of the way people are, if they saw me across the street, like I had some people that would know me from across the street, but like on just literally on the other side of like this walkway, and certain people knew me there, certain people knew me outside McDonald's, but the people that would give to me outside McDonald's, which was a little bit of a better spot, it just had more traffic, it just was a little bit better. That spot, I was busking on that spot, and the security guard was giving me all this shit again, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm on city property, and like bylaw would come and shit. I have to fight with bylaw and shit. I became like a busking bandito. That's what they called me. And
That's a great fucking name.
Yeah, the busking bandito. And fucking bylaw comes up to me, and bylaw is telling me, they're like, you can't do this, and I'm like, no, I can. I'm on city property. You can't kick off because the mall. Because I was literally calling up the mall, like the owners or whatever you call it, the fucking head office of the mall. Look, this fucking guy, blah blah, fighting with him all the time because he was just a dick. Like he was gonna get me out of there, whether the police came or whether what. Like at the end of the day, I knew I was gonna have to go. So sometimes it's just easier to get up and go than to have to fucking fight. But you get so tired of having to get up and go all the time. Like I figured out what this guy's lunch schedule was, and he figured out that I figured out his lunch schedule, so he would like come on his lunch to come fuck with me because he knew, and he would like go around the corner. I would watch him from my spot over like across the street, and I would watch him, and he would go across or go around the building. It was a big building, so he would go at a certain point, and then I would sneak over to McDonald's and sit there for sometimes it was like fucking an hour or two. Other times it'd be like 15 minutes because he caught on that I was just doing this all the time. So he started making it a bigger problem, and I'm like, fuck, like I need this because A, I'm like a drug addict, so I need my money, and B, I'm homeless, I still need fucking money. Like when you're a homeless drug addict, the one thing you fucking need the most is money and shelter. Like it's just plain and simple. So I'm dealing with this guy, and then the bylaw comes, and the police were coming too. Like the police had come a couple times too, like to harass me. But the police were also like, I don't really want to deal with this shit. Like
we're just coming because we have to.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they were telling me. We're only here because we have to be, blah blah. Because that guy's an asshole. And the cops were siding with me a lot more too. Like they were like, he's an asshole. He's just doing this to bug you, blah blah blah. But technically we can't, blah blah blah. So like the bylaw came up to me and they said, well, why don't you just get a busking license and go busk in the two spots? And I was like, I don't want your busking license. I don't. It's not that. And I was like, I'm flattered. Like I'm flattered. Thank you. But like, no, because then you own me. Then you own me, but then you control me. Because then I'd be assigned to a certain spot at a certain fucking time, and that doesn't always work for me. Like, and what if I want to work later? What if I want to show up an hour late? What if, like, I'm a musician. I'll work on my time, or as a busker anyways, you work on your time, but you still have to follow a certain schedule. You still got to be out there on lunch. If you go out there at 2:30, you ain't getting shit. If you leave at 4, you're going to miss the dinner rush. But because of that shit like that, right, I would have to deal with this fucking security guard and miss like the dinner rush, and I'd be like, fuck man, I just missed like $25 because this guy like kicked me out of my spot. So the bylaw came when I was fighting with them over the busking spot, and I'm telling them like, no, I'm not going to your spots because they're dead. Like they're dead. One spot was like near another mall, like a completely different mall. But it just, even though there was some traffic, it wasn't the kind of traffic you want, because it was just people trying to get on the SkyTrain and leave, like coming and going really fast. Whereas where I was, people were like, they would finish work and then be like, oh, I'm gonna walk over to McDonald's and grab a bite, and then they'd kind of stroll. So I could get a lot of strolling people, you know, and like the bus, usually people would go from where they wanted me to go, get on a bus, and then go to where I was. So I was like, no, this spot has way more traffic. This is where this is where I make my money. You know, at the end of the day, I don't care if this is convenient for you as a city, because you guys aren't the ones doing this job. I'm doing this. I'm busking. I'm going to go to my spot, and that's tough shit. So I fought with these guys all summer. I got to a point where the security guard I was fighting with, and all the other security guards on his team loved me. And he was almost trying to get guys on his team fired for letting me stay longer. Like I heard word that he was trying to get other guys fired for liking me. Like, this guy was genuinely, he was like one of those guys who goes out of their way to be a prick. And he was telling other guys that I wasn't homeless. And people would believe him, and they would come up to me, and I remember the guy's like, sure, man, here, take this. And he goes, and he gives me the finger. And I'm like, fuck you, man. Like, what? Like, he's like, yeah, you're not homeless. And I'm like, what? Where the fuck do you think that? He goes, oh, that security guard over there told me. I'm like, yeah, the same one that gives me fucking trouble every day? I was livid. So, because I'm losing money, right? That's money out of my pocket, and I was fucking, this guy was just the worst asshole I've ever dealt with in my entire life. So what I ended up doing was, I was so pissed and dealing with this shit. I was at my wit's end. I was like breaking down, because I was losing money. Like, every fucking day I'm losing money. It's getting colder. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So when I was in a shelter too, like I was sleeping outside, or I'd be sleeping in the shelter. The shelters are not fucking fun. And I would get away. Like, you have to be at home. You have to be back to the shelter at a certain time. But because I was busting, I was like, oh, my job, I have to stay later. So I would be able to stay out a bit late, and I was able to push that a bit. But the security guard ends up coming up to me one day, and I guess he just knew the camera, and he just wanted to fight me or something. Like, it was different. Like, that day was just different. Like, he was like, I was tired, he was tired, we were just at our wits' end, and he came up to me and put his like nose on me, just like that, just like the second he touched me with his nose, he goes, you hit me, and then he slammed me into a fucking car. Like a parked car. Like, he pushed me into this parked car, and I was like, and don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to like scream it out loud, but I was in withdrawal, so I was in a lot of pain. Like, my body was aching at that point, and I'm just trying to get like my next fix, whatever, and like it's early in the morning, so I hadn't, it's like early in the morning, I was still kind of out of it, whatever, right? I'm like just fucking in a lot of pain, and when he shoved me, I was like, I can't fucking believe this. Like, this guy fucking hit me. Like, that's it. I'm calling the police. You're fucking done. And when the police came and stuff, they said that the video, he knew the camera so well that when he touched me, you can't see who touched who because of the way the cameras were. So they were like, we can't tell who did who touched who, so we're gonna have to let it go. I was fucking so mad. I was like, you know what? That's it. Like, I'm fighting this like dead hard. So what I did was I got a petition together, and I got over 100 people to sign it. And then I called the city and said, look, I've got this petition, blah, blah. They said, we don't care if you have like 5. I was like, oh, I've got over 100 names on this thing. They said, we don't care if you have 100,000 names. We're not letting you do anything. Like, we're still going to kick you out every time. We're still going to be, like, you're still not going to busk here. And then I was just fucking lit. And then at this point, I was like, I'm a junkie. I'm just getting tired. I'm burnt out. I'm using, I was probably spending about $50 every day. And then that would last me through the day a bit in the morning, then I could grab again. And then I was just living that lifestyle. People were feeding me. That's the other thing too. Like, God bless them. They were feeding me food and helping me out along the way. I'm just getting by. And then I met friends too. The other thing too, my friend Peter, he was watching this building that was being renovated. like it was it used to be a restaurant and it was being turned into a daycare. So he would sit with me sometimes, and then I convinced him to let me go use like around back where like the back of the building. So he was really cool about that, and I like God bless him because like he let me go back there, and he was like, well, what do I do? What happens? Well, I was like, dude, just maybe every 10-15 minutes, just give me a shout, and like if you have to, dude, just pull this thing out and hit me with this. Like I showed him how to use a Narcan kit. It's really easy to use a Narcan kit. Do you know how to use one, or you ever seen one?
I know the concept of it. I haven't had to use one, but around here it's a fucking gigantic issue. It's just like how like it's insane. Like for a town of 21,000 people, that many people are screwed up on fentanyl and ODing on a daily basis. It's sad.
Vicious. It is, and that's the other thing too. Like when I like essentially what happened was I was at my wit's end, and like addiction, like I was in a weird position because when you're homeless and you're an addict, what they want to do is they want to put you on Suboxone, right? Suboxone just they're gonna wait for you to be in full blown withdrawal. And then they're gonna put you on that, and then it's gonna what do you call it? It's gonna make you feel better, whatever. But the thing is you have to be in full blown withdrawal to go on it. And like first time that there was like one day where I don't know, I woke up one morning and I was just sick. Like I was really not doing well. Like I couldn't breathe. Like I just could not fucking breathe. To be honest, I was in withdrawal and not really fully realizing it because of how badly I couldn't breathe. That was the other thing too with fentanyl. The withdrawal from fentanyl, like after a couple hours, I would lose my breath. And that's a scary feeling. Like that's a really scary feeling to really lose your breath like that. So that's where the panicking of your brain is like, you need this now because you can't breathe. So I was like stuck somewhere or whatever. I was like sleeping the first month I was homeless or so. I was sleeping on someone's couch. God bless my friend Laura for letting me. And it got to a point where she was like, I'm surprised you're still here. Like, are you like, you've been here for a while. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. I haven't figured out my shit yet. I'll go along. So I did, but God bless her for letting me stay for a month. And then for some reason, I ended up getting back on the couch at the Hell House because Joe had left for a couple months, and I convinced them. Like I went over to visit a friend, and then everybody was gone, so I convinced them to let me stay for a month. And then I got kicked out twice, technically, in the same place. But then dealing with the busking and everything was just like getting too hard on me. The addiction was just fucking killing me. I had another friend, Martin, and Martin, he was a really good guy. He helped me through a lot of shit. We reflected off each other a lot. I was talking about the Suboxone. I was talking about the Suboxone. I was struggling with like withdrawal one day. I had to call an ambulance. I went in the hospital for the day, and I was just screaming in withdrawal, like in so much pain. They were like, "Sir, you're bothering the other patients." I'm like, "I don't care. I'm dying in withdrawal," like just fucking dying in pain. So giving me the Suboxone, I ended up going back or whatever, and I think it was around the same time where I ended up back on the couch at the Hell House, and because going back there, everyone was using Suboxone wasn't the right answer. It was like, no, Suboxone's not good, and then I kept like putting it under my tongue and then taking off and then not taking it. So like I was like, oh, I'll take it later when I'm in actual withdrawal, but I was really never in withdrawal because I just kept myself out of it. So then when I was like I said, I went from someone's couch. After I got kicked out, I went to someone's couch, went back there for a month on the couch there, then ended up in a shelter for a month or so. And I was just breaking down. I got, when you're homeless, like I said, like you can't take Suboxone because you'll just go right back into it. Like the second you come out, you're right back because you have to get yourself out of that situation. And methadone, if you end up on methadone, then you're just hooked on two drugs. Like that's the other thing too. Like you have to fix yourself before you can fix the addiction, and that's really hard because the addiction just eats away at you. So I didn't like my dad knew that I was really sick, but he didn't my dad was the last person I wanted to tell in the world because he was like, I was surprised he didn't fly. Yeah, like I was surprised he didn't fly down, beat my ass, and then fucking fly back out and tell me to figure it out, like I was like legit, like I was scared to tell him, and he knew. And then I didn't tell him it was fentanyl, I told him it was heroin, like as if it's any different, but like you know what I mean, technically it is, but like really it's not. But like So he was like, there was a big difference for him. He felt like fentanyl was like gonna kill me instantly, heroin I could maybe live, like kind of thing. So I always said like, oh, I'm just on heroin, I'm just on heroin. So I don't think he took it as serious. And I was like homeless. He's like, oh, you'll figure it out, you'll figure it out. Just praying for me. I got to a point where I was calling him and I was like, Dad, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm gonna die. If you don't come and get me, I will die. And it got to the point where, yeah, like the first couple times I did that and said like, hey, I'm gonna die. He was like, no, tough it out. It got to a point where I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, we're in September now, and it's gonna get snowy in October, and I'm not gonna die from the addiction. I'm gonna die from freezing to death outside. Like I was more worried. I wasn't necessarily worried about the addiction as much as I was worried about not having a roof above my head. Because it's one thing to be homeless in the summer, and it's one thing to choose to be homeless, but it's another thing to be forced into homeless and be in the winter. So it was tough.
I couldn't even fucking imagine that. Like I'm so bad with the cold. Like even being right now, I'm in a t-shirt and have jeans on. Like I couldn't even just imagine being like out in that nonsense. Like having to be out in that nonsense.
Yeah. And the day that really broke down for me, it was this weekend, and in New West they were doing like a whole recovery addiction parade thing. And I remember this girl, Catherine, this lady, God bless her too. Catherine was the one that kind of kept me afloat towards the end. She was like this old lady, and I reminded her of her son. So she kind of took interest in me, and it was hard to tell her that I was an addict too, because she was such nice lady, but she was there for me, and she let me stay over a couple times, which was so nice of her. And she was like, I don't understand why your dad won't come and get you. I don't understand why. And I was like, I don't think he understands. And then one day I just told him, like we were at the recovery parade, and I showed Catherine that she was like, oh, here, we can get you help. And I couldn't find a single vendor for the recovery program that would actually help me in my situation. All of them, you had to be like at least a week sober, or they couldn't help you, or at least a week or 90 days or whatever, right? I think it was the last store. I kind of was not the biggest fan of that recovery program out there, and I've told them that too personally. But then again, there's a lot of good programs out there. There's a lot of good, and they're working on like the next level of treatment. I almost got into a treatment program where I was able to use like legal like heroin or whatever. And I was close to getting into it, but then I don't know. By the time they wanted to get me into it, I was on my way out. So I was kind of like, I don't think that this is for me. But when I was telling my dad, like, I'm going to die, like, there was that weekend after the thing, like, I realized there was nobody that could help me. And I didn't want to just get on a plane and go home, because you can't just do that with an addiction like that. You have to, there's a certain way you kind of got to do it, at least in my opinion. And the way I got through it was my dad finally decided to come out and get me. And what happened was he booked his flight literally on 9/11, like September 11th, 9/11. It was like really significant for him and I, because it was like, that day he booked that flight that night, and it was like I called him that day and I was just bawling. I was like, no, like I'm gonna die. Like I'm not this isn't months anymore. It might not be days, but this is definitely weeks. I'm gonna die in weeks or so. So he was like, fuck it, I gotta do something. So his buddy, one of his good friends, Vic, lives out in Pemberton, and he had an RV that he wanted to sell. So he told my dad, if you sell the RV for me and get me some money on it, I'll let you take the RV with your son back to Ontario. So my dad flew out and came and picked me up, and like for about 2 weeks, he kind of got all my affairs in order while I was like struggling with my addiction. He was like, he had to kind of see how he saw firsthand how much that drug had a grip on me. Like it had a grip. Like before he came, there was a lady that gave me $150. I don't know. It started with 20, and then she just kept dropping money. And my reaction to the money kept making her kept getting her to give me more money somehow. And at the end of the day, I walked out with 150 from this one lady alone. And I called her crying, being like, Dad, I have $150 and my feet are going to the drug dealer. I'm not going. My brain isn't going. My feet are going. My feet are walking me down this hill. Like, I can't physically stop myself. I could not stop myself. If I did, I would be like screaming and flailing in the middle of the street. Like, it would be embarrassing, you know, like I couldn't not go. And it was weird. Like, there was times where I'd be in withdrawal and I would find a way and finally get that cash. I'd be so tired, falling asleep on the bus, but my brain would wake up 2 stops before I had to get off because my body or brain, addiction's weird like that. So my dad had to see firsthand like how much that had a grip on me. And then, you know, I was on I started to get on methadone because I kind of knew he was coming, or I was really desperate to like for help. I was trying anything. I was like, oh, Suboxone didn't work, I'll try methadone. My dad was worried about that too. And then he came to help me. I had this idea that I would just wean off. And you can't really wean off. It's hard. You know, I tried. I got from like maybe $30 or $50 a day down to like $20-$25 a day or something like that. I got maybe $15 a day, or, you know, like a 20 bag would last me almost all day. So stuff like that, right? Like, I did get lower, and that kind of helped me going forward, because if I had been on such a higher dose, like that's when I got on methadone, they put me by the time I finally stopped going up, because they don't start you just at a high dose. They start you at a low dose and then you work your way up. By the time, because of how strong fentanyl is, by the time I walked away, I was at 70, and I almost went up to 90 because like a couple days before we left Vancouver, my dad was like, you got to go into detox for a couple days because I'm scared of how you're going to be driving back. So I was like, okay. I went into detox for 2 days. He convinced me. You know, it wasn't easy to convince me, but I went. And then 2 days in detox, or it was like a Friday morning I went. I was out Sunday morning. And then we spent the day in Vancouver together. And this is kind of an interesting one, because we spent the day in Vancouver together, and we went to, my mom really likes churches, so my dad wanted to go to like the oldest church in Vancouver for my mom to see, you know, take pictures and stuff. And one of the things that he did was he wanted to get a rosary. He was like, I gotta get you whatever one you want, just pick a rosary. So I picked this one that was like, I liked it. It was black, so I liked it. So he got the priest. He wanted to sit in for one of the class. So we sat in for mass, and I'd never done it before, and I was like, okay, I'll give this a. I'm trying to get recovered. My dad's like, you know, instead of finding drugs, find God, kind of thing, right? My dad's not overly religious, but he is, you know, I'd say he's like 70-80% religious. He's very, you know, he is a Christian. So he got this rosary bead blessed by the guy who gave the Sunday Mass sermon. And I guess that night, and also I'd gone to a dispensary, so I was like, oh, last time in Vancouver, I'll go to a dispensary. We went to like a smoking bar or whatever. Like, so I smoked weed at the bar. My dad ate some apple pie, or was it cherry? My dad had some pie, and I fucking sat there and smoked some Blue God, because, you know, I was like, oh, I just went to a church, I'm gonna buy some Blue God. So I was smoking that, and then I guess on our way back, because we were having such a good time, I forgot about methadone. And I had to go to like the what do you call it, the London Drug, like the Shoppers Drug Mart of out west. I had to go there to go get my methadone, and I missed out by like 10 minutes on my methadone. So because at that point I had just come out of detox for 2 days, and then I don't have my methadone, I was a Jonesy little shit. Like, I was like, I'm fucking dying. Oh my God, it was awful. So the next morning I fucking, I guess like I stayed up all night concocting this plan. My dad went for breakfast like he was doing every morning to like the Waffle House or whatever, and I snuck off to the bank, which, by the way, before my dad had come, I frauded the bank for $300 or $200. I kept putting in blank checks because I was at that point, you're at full-blown addiction, right? Like, when you're at full-blown addiction, you start doing stupid shit. So like that was my downfall. That was how I knew. I was like, yeah, that's how I knew too. That was another thing. I was like, oh, I've done this, now I can't recover. Like, now I'm on a downhill no matter what. So because of that, I had to go to a teller. I had to go to a bank teller to get my money. And the next morning, my dad was in the Waffle House. I ran to the teller. He was trying to get a hold of me, couldn't figure out why. And he's like, oh shit. So he catches on. By the time he caught on, ran over to the bank. I'm down the road trying to go get like drugs. But I have this rosary beads on me, and there's 2 guys I used to grab from. It makes real sense really quick. There was a guy that was closer, but he had weaker stuff, and there was a guy that was further, but he had stronger stuff.
Always how it goes.
Yeah, and then exactly. So I'm like, oh, I hopped on the bus right away. I'm like booking it down. I call the guy. I'm like, yeah, you got it ready? He's like, yeah, I got it ready. I'm like, okay. And for some reason, I don't know, maybe I called both or something. The other guy called me, like the closer guy with weaker stuff called me. And I don't know what possessed me. I still to this day don't know. But I got off the bus and I went and grabbed the weaker stuff and I used again, even though I'd been in detox for 2 days, whatever. But then, so my parents were really worried. They're freaking out, trying to call me. And I had a dentist appointment because my dad kept making me go to the dentist because I had like good dental care out west. So my teeth are really fucked. Like I'm not even going to show you how many teeth I'm missing, but I have a lot gone. And so he was getting me to go all the time to this dentist, and like I was like, fuck, I don't want to go to this dentist because every time I go to the dentist, I just want to use down right after. I'm like, okay, I'll get through it because I'll just use after. So I'm like, fuck, struggling about this dentist appointment. I grab the weaker stuff, and then I convinced my buddy Martin to come with me, and then I convinced him that I'll give him like what was it, like $35 or $50 or something, and he's got to go grab me 3 bags, and then I'll share a bag with him or something like that. I'll take the other 2 home, and then that will be what I use on my trip back just to like wean me down, right? That was my plan. I was going to wean me down. Then Martin decided, like, so Martin goes and gets the good stuff. And there's a reason why I'm saying all this. So so for some reason at the last minute, he gets a weird change of heart. He feels bad for my dad coming out all the way to get me, and he's doing this, like, you know, kind of going behind my dad's back to go get me stuff. So he gives my dad the 3 bags, and I'm livid. I come out of this dentist appointment like I'm gonna kill this guy. Like I'm like, you fucking did what? You just gave $50 of my drugs away. Like, I'm gonna kill you. So in the end, after arguing with him and stuff, I got in a big fucking argument with him. And then, I don't know what ended up happening. I remember seeing my ex that day and my buddy Cam that day, and I was just livid. I was so angry. I was such a mess, too, because I was like I was like fucking withdrawing and all that shit. So anyways, that night, I was really pissed with Martin over that. I was like, fuck, you owe me $50, you fucking asshole. So anyways, I was pissed. And then later that night, Martin calls me and is like, dude, I'm going to make it up to you. And I'm like, fuck, it's like 11 o'clock at night, dude. I'm going home. Like, I'm leaving the next morning. Like, what do you want? And he's like, I'm gonna grab for us one last time, one last go at it. All right, well, fuck it, why not? One last time, sure, why not? So we go and we missed the bus, or we missed the last SkyTrain. So we jump in a taxi. I don't know how much money he has, so we get out of the taxi. I'm trying to call this dealer. The dealer's kind of like, I don't know, sometimes they run on different shifts, so I got the sketchy guy for some reason, and he's like, oh man, blah, 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 being all weird, and like, I'm like, yo, can I meet up with you for 20, where are you, blah, blah, trying to figure this shit out. Just everything in the world was making every miscommunication happen possible. We run out of money, we were supposed to get 2 bags, Martin ran out of money in the cab, like, trying to get the cab money, all this shit, so like, everything in its power is preventing us from scoring. And then to the point where I'm like, the guy was like pissed. He was like, don't fucking call my number again. Like, cause I kept calling me like, yo man, can you meet me like here or there? And he'd be like, meet me here. I'm like, I don't know where that is. He's like, you fucking idiot. Cause you know, they get angry, right? Those guys have a temper. So anyways, the whole point to all of this is that, yeah, oh yeah, and quickly too, we were walking around that night, and I don't know, Martin had like $5 or something in his pocket, and this old lady is like clearly junked out, is like asks him for some money, and there's this other guy in the parking lot too, sketchy as all hell, asking for money, and fuck, I thought we were gonna die or get robbed or stabbed or something, because Martin, for some fucking dumb reason, gives this old lady $5, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna get us killed, because like that guy just saw you give her $5, he thinks you got money now. Now he's coming after us. Great. And I'm like sweating, I'm like shaking, we're pacing, we're trying to get this fucking dealer to grab again, blah, blah. And the whole time I'm scared shitless going through this shit. I'm so frustrated with Martin because he's just taking me through this never-ending fucking mission of nonsense that's not working. So at the end of the day, we realize we're not going to grab. We walk back to where the SkyTrain is, and we're waiting for the next morning to come so that like we can just get on the SkyTrain. He goes his way, I go my way. Never see each other again. Not on purpose, but just because I was going back out east, he was, you know, going back to his wife. And we never ended up grabbing or anything like that. And I realized after why, and it was because of that rosary bead. It was that fucking rosary bead, because my dad had got that blessed from the guy, and when he got it blessed, he was like, my dad's, I don't know how it worked exactly, but it was like my dad wanted that thing to be blessed, and he wanted me to keep it with me to keep me away from drugs. he was like, I'm going to get this blessed, so this will prevent, like, keep you from using or keep you away from a bad crowd or whatever. Like, it'll keep you safe, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I always felt like the reason why I grabbed the weaker stuff instead of that stronger stuff that day, and went through all of that and never got, like, through all that whole mission of that day, I never got that stronger stuff, and I totally believe it's because of that little, you know, little thing like that. So my dad got me, and then we went across the country again, and I was in withdrawal. I came back in October 2017, and then I sobered up. And then, like, we were talking about wrestling, how wrestling got me sober.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily got me sober, but it's just that it really helped me along, because it was something that it was definitely something that, like, has so much content to it, right? So every day I was like, I'd wake up in withdrawal, and I'd just look on my phone, and I'd watch a YouTube video of, like, top 10 wrestlers, or, like, that you didn't know, you know, did this, or it was just, I immersed myself so much in the business, and I learned so much behind the scenes, what was going on. I learned where the old guys were. I learned who the new guys are. I immersed myself in that world for so long that I love it. Yeah, that's the thing that it because of, like I was saying, you know, you have Raw, that's 3 hours. You have SmackDown, that's only 2 hours or hour and a half, I think, something like that. And then you have, I mean, I didn't follow NXT or 205, but they are there, and there's so much behind the stuff. There's all those things like Ride Along. They have the 24. It's like, I think it's like, it's called 365, and it follows people they followed AJ Styles and Kevin Owens for like a year. Stuff like that, you know, you can always immerse yourself in so much content with them. I mean, I was going to get the WWE network, but I just don't have that kind of money. But, like, you know, like, because of the content, you know, it's just because of the content. Like, I mean, you know, going back and watching old WrestleManias, and that was something I did, like, when I was, you know, there was this spot when I was busking and stuff outside that mall. I was going to this little, like, there was this back of this alleyway or some shit, like, back down this one road, and you, like, went, and there was, like, a fence, and I snuck under the fence and came right back to the spot, and, like, it could put my back against the wall, so I would always go there on my breaks, like my busking breaks, and I'd always go there and use, because nobody, like, really knew. It was really off and secluded, but I would sit there and I would watch, like, different wrestling matches, like Triple H and Shawn Michaels versus Kane and Undertaker, and just all these, like, old, like, video clips I could get from YouTube, and, like, thank God I had a good data plan, so I ran that shit up quick. Like, oh, YouTube eats your data, like, that's a fine. But anyway, so that, my parents for giving us a good, you know, my dad, I thank my dad, because he, you know, he's the reason I have a cell phone and shit. So, like, yeah, that's he helped me with that a lot. When it comes to sobriety and that level, I'm really good about that. Like, everybody is doing on their own level. Like, I love pot myself. Like, that was the one thing I kind of noticed about myself personally, is that when it comes to addiction, it's like, you know, they always say, like, once an addict, always an addict. And I think that, for me at least, that applies in the sense that I went from, like, you know, doing what I call down to coming back and doing weed, like smoking weed all the time. And it was weird. I kind of switched to one for the other and then replaced it back again. So I find that, you know, for me, I've always had that, like, you know, it's like if it wasn't weed, it would be something else. But at the same time, everybody that I know is at different levels. I have good friends that, you know, like, they poke and use needles, and that's them. And I still love them, and I still care about them, because that's, how do I explain it? If, like, I know drugs change people, but if the person I'm talking to is still, like, coherent and is still, like, a good, solid person, I don't really care what, you know, like, nodding out mid-conversation, you know, like, kind of thing like that. Or as long as they're not, like, grinding their jaw and, like, doing some crazy shit, you know, like, I mean, I talk a million miles a minute. You'd probably think I was on an upper, but, like, no, I'm naturally that way. That's why I get pretty, yeah.
I'm the exact same way, man. I'm the exact same way.
It's kind of funny, because, you know what? I know, like, some people who are in recovery, or not necessarily in recovery, but whatever, like, they're at different stages of sobriety, and they'll say to me, like, dude, why do you always fucking talk about it? Like, why are you always going on about it, or whatever? Like, you know, like, fuck it, it's kind of tiring, I don't want to hear it, or whatever, or something. And I'm like, man, honestly, it's what helps me. You know, like I got into an argument with a buddy of mine who I'm good friends with now, but I remember one of the times when I first met him, he was like, man, like, blah, blah, like, you're always going on about this, like, you know, like, you're not helping anybody, blah, blah, and I turned around, I was like, dude, I'm helping myself. Like, I forget what I'm kind of paraphrasing, I forget exactly what he said, but I turned around and I said, you know what, man, like, this is what helps me get through this, because I'm able to talk about this and reflect on my experiences personally, and because of that reflection, I'm comfortable with who I am and what I've done and where I've been and everything like that. So I don't have any like not necessarily shame, but like I don't have any like, oh, that's not a good topic or that's not something I want to bring up or whatever. It's like, fuck, it happened and that's how it goes. Like I'm not gonna pretend it didn't, you know. So I'm super open and comfortable with all that, like and stuff like that. And I've been in rooms too after like being sober and stuff like that where people have been doing drugs and stuff like that. And I think what it comes down to is if you don't want to do it, you're just not going to do it. Like if you don't want to do something, then you just got to tell yourself, like, I just don't want to do this. Like if you you could say, oh, I don't want to do this, but you really want to do it, you know, like, oh, I don't want to smoke cigarettes, but then I'm going to go smoke a fucking pack. But there's a difference if you're like with hard alcohol, you know, you're like, I just don't want to drink hard alcohol. I can still drink a beer, but I don't want to drink hard alcohol. If you just don't want it, you're just not going to do it. And that was the thing for me when it comes to my sobriety, whether it's, I'm not necessarily sober off alcohol, but I don't drink like I used to by any means. And that's just because I just didn't want to anymore. You know, and if I wanted, like today, like if I wanted to go and grab a 6-pack of beer and do that and drink 6 beers while I was doing this, I could have done that, but I was like, for me personally, I don't feel that. So when I do drink, it's because I'm out at a show or something like that. Like I made a post recently about how it's not punk rock that makes me want to drink. It's drinking that makes me want to punk rock.
Yeah, I read that. That was a great fucking post. I like just how you've associated it with those good times, but it's not the alcohol that's associated with it. It's the times that are associated, but you were drinking at the same time, so that's why it's there.
And some people like lose track of that because, you know, like some people, like especially when you start playing on stage a lot, if you're playing on stage and you're always drinking, then when you come time to like write new stuff or sit and jam, you're like, oh, I want a beer, I want a beer. So like I force myself in some regards to make sure that like I don't always do that. Sometimes I just get a really good stone on and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna jam. But no, then when I got back, like that was the thing too. Like I just found things that like, what could I do that I like that, you know, will help me. And the one big thing too, video games was a big thing. And I remember like at first I couldn't even walk up the stairs. Like when I got to my dad's and I was in the basement, I couldn't even walk up the stairs. And then it got to a point where I was able to walk more. I remember getting a Nintendo DS or whatever, the 3DS, because I was like, you know what? I was always in the car going from Arthur to either Fergus or Guelph, depending on what day, to go get my methadone. So I was always in the car. So I was like, fuck, I'm traveling so much. I might as well just get one of these things. And a lot of time off. And that allowed me to kind of grow as a person. And it really allowed me to like become myself outside of the washout because I had been the washout for so long. And during that like whole summer of being homeless and during the whole time before, the couple years before that, like 2015, 16, you know, all through 17, I was like grinding so hard as being a musician that I was pretty worn out. Like, you know, I was glad to be back in Ontario. I played a couple of really good shows at the Green Room, St. Catherine. I was stoked to play that and place. And then I took a lot of time off. And then not too long ago, like I spent more time, like I was like, I'm going to focus on being a father. And it was nice because, you know, my son's he just turned 6 on Halloween. But I was really happy because I finally got to get to know him better. And I was, you know, kind of reconcile things with my ex. So I was able to be in his life again. I was sobered up and just, yeah, things started to get a lot better. I was living in Arthur and it was really isolating. So one of the big things that I did was like, I came and lived with my mom. Like I started coming up here for a couple trips in Binbrook. It's just outside of Hamilton. It's like a little suburb. Out here, one of the big things that Arthur and Binbrook both have, and I always tell this to people who are trying to get like clean off drugs, like you have to go where the drugs aren't because you'll find the drugs everywhere. Like everywhere, whether you're in Owen Sound, whether you're in Arthur, fuck, even I know somebody offered me blow once, and I'm in Binbrook. Like I didn't think that was. So I was like, you know, so it's out there, but you have to put yourself in a situation. Like I didn't go out very much, or if I went to Guelph, I tried to stay secluded more, and if you don't do that, then you're just going to end up in the bad, even just by like times where I was in Guelph, there was times where I didn't necessarily relapse, but I got pretty close, like, or I hit the bottle hard and was like, who can I call, like, and then you have to realize you have to take yourself out of that environment in order to get clean, because you can want to quit all day long, but if I would have been back in that hell house, I would have never gotten clean, ever in a million years gotten clean. And I love that place so much. I didn't want to leave. I fucking loved it so much. But when I finally left and got out, I was like, man, like, and my friend Credence, she died in that house, and I miss her a lot, because she was, like I was saying before, she let me stay and stuff. I really, she was such a good person. And that house ate her up, and she kind of had a bit of history with that house before there anyways, but I just she's her and Andre I miss a lot. And I talked to Gunther recently, and he's in Toronto or something like that. I want to meet up with him again, because I haven't seen him since being out there. But now it's kind of weird, because I'm not that person anymore. It's not that I'm not the washout, but I've grown a lot. I'm more of a father now. Before I was like like punk, like I always say, like I feel like now it's more like punk is dad. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I feel like I wasn't really, like I said, I wasn't really ready to have kids, and I'm still like kind of not. But I'm glad that I have Parker, because Parker is like a huge ball in my life. Like, he's like one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Blessing, like, what do you call it? Like, blessing in disguise or whatever. Because he's gonna be that next wave of punk rocker, and I just see it, because like taking him to the show, and then the band Stand Against Fear, Mark Davidson and Nate's, like I was talking about Nate from Nasty's, Nate's in that band as well, Stand Against Fear, and I played Harmony Lunch and Kitchener with them. And it was so nice, because I hadn't seen Nate in a couple of years, so he'd known that I'd gone through some shit. So he kind of saw me full circle from like when I lived with him and was like a basket case, through like knowing all the shit that I'd gone through in Vancouver, to seeing me with my son and my new girlfriend, and being able to see like that I've grown and have become a man, like not a man, but I've become more of a man than I was when I was there, with him, or going through
more of like a mature person.
Yeah. Exactly, and I'm still like, I'm still wild and crazy and whatever in some regards, but I'm also a lot more toned down. I'm a lot more mature about things, and I'm I still have my days, but at the same time, I've recognized a lot more about myself than I had maybe in a couple of years prior to that, going through like Ottawa, or going through all these things. Like, I think life, you're always trying to find yourself, and then you get to a point where you're like, fuck, like, and I always felt like I knew myself. That was the one thing, like with BPD. It's like sometimes you have like, what do you call it, like dysmorphia, or not dysmorphia, but where you feel like you like trouble having a self identity. You have trouble with yourself.
Just like a lack of self confidence and stuff like that as well too.
Yeah, like a lack of like who you are, or feeling like you don't have a purpose or something like that. And I always felt like I had a purpose. I always felt like I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to do something relevant. I wanted for what I said to affect people. And I think when you hear songs like you've heard some of the songs that I have, like, I'm not sure if you've heard Out of Place, but one of the things with Out of Place was Fucked Up and Free is all about how like amazing and cool it is to be homeless, but then Out of Place was my way of saying like, no, it's not always cool. Sometimes it really sucks being homeless, and sometimes it's really cool. And it was kind of that way of humbling myself through all those experiences. And I think that there's like a nice blend when you kind of listen to some of my songs about how it goes from like traveling, being like a homeless musician, the wild craziness of that. Sometimes there's like a bit of breakup, love, and stuff like that from what I can remember, Paint You Blue. But then it also kind of like wraps up in that like kind of homey sense. I always like try to give people a sense of home in the end. And I like when I play some of the sets that really take people on that journey through, being traveling, like the ups and downs of traveling, the ups and downs of being in a relationship, and then kind of wrapping it all up in like a nice package at home. As I've grown,
you've definitely taken me through that. Like even in this like few hours we've done this, I've definitely got that sense of all of it coming together here. And I just want to say, like, you can hear the soul in those music. You can hear like the experience, but you can hear like the actual heart like you have. I can see and like hear you, like you're not a fucking derelict. You weren't like a fucking junkie that was out robbing like everybody, and like you had to do what you had to do, but you were a musician, so you had a way to fund yourself. But it's all like and all your songs, it all comes through. It's just that soul and that heart, like it all comes in and it bleeds together.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you, D. Like, I super appreciate
No worries, man. And I want to ask this question because we were talking about this, and the name The Washout, it really sticks out to me. So what did it mean when you first came up with it, like back then? And what does that name mean to you now after you've gone through all this shit we've talked about here to now to where we're sitting in like this position? So just...
Thank you. That's a really good, that's actually like that's a boss ass question. Thank you, man.
I do my best.
I came up with the Washout when I was like 12. It's like a really young age because like I always remember like MTV, Green Day, like they were doing like Nimrod, and as much as I'm not the biggest Green Day fan now, I remember MTV did like a series, Radiohead. There's a couple other bands that were on it where it was like an hour of like footage. It was like they would film a concert, and I ended up like on an old VHS. I ended up filming like probably half an hour or so of this concert before the VHS player cut out or whatever, and I got this footage of them at this concert, and I played it over and over and over and over. Like I probably broke that VCR just playing it so many times. And me and like my buddy, me and my next door neighbor, and he's in a band now, Cold Shoulder. So he's also like my neighbor from when I was a kid. He's also a musician now. Like years later, I met him again and was like, oh cool, you're a musician. Because I remember jumping up and down my bed with him and I and watching this over and over and like air guitar. And there's a part where like Mike Dirnt gets a nosebleed during one of his sets, and we'd pull out like Vampire Blood and do like down our nose. This is like hilarious, but it's like that was what I knew. I was like, I want to be like a musician. I want to be that front man. I want to be somebody that is irrelevant or like is kind of cool like that, and I want to do it in a certain way. I liked how she was like I liked the idea of like Nimrod, because it's like kind of the anti of what it's like anti-popular. And I had a lot of trouble in school, like getting beaten up and like fucking dealing with like shit like that, right? I was like the nerdy or like the most picked on kid and whatever, right? So growing up, I just got into punk and was like, oh my god, I don't give a fuck about anybody else. This is the coolest shit. And like everybody was like listening to like Backstreet Boys and I don't know, Spice Girls and shit. And I was like, Green Day, it was fucking awesome. So then that got me into like Rancid and stuff. But with the Washout, I remember at first I was like, I want to come up with like a cool band name, like something out of that like Nimrod-y, like, I don't know. I was trying to think of something, and like almost like I look at like how the Replacements look, like the guys from the Replacements, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like the image I was kind of going for, where like I knew that I was gonna go into music doing something that had been done 1,000 times before, but I just wanted to do it because I loved it, because I loved music. I just wanted to do it anyways. It's like everybody's played C, G, A, and F. But I was like, screw it. I'm just going to literally, I felt like the Washout, it meant a lot. Like what it meant to me was like the idea that I'd be doing something that was washed out. It's been done 1,000,000 times before. And like I started realizing, because I think at a certain point, like Avril Lavigne started to kind of mainstream pop punk and stuff like that, Blink-182 and whatever, started to really like make it, and then like make it more mainstream. So I watched as the same people that made fun of me for liking punk rock started like getting mohawks and like doing shit like that, and it was like, that's kind of fucking annoying. Like like I don't like good stuff, like when you listen to Pennywise or like something like that, right? So I always like would.
You used to beat me up for listening to this music, and here you are like, what the fuck? Like
it's not even like they're listening to the good stuff. It's not like they were listening to Rancid, NoFX, Pennywise, like Less Than Jake or something like that. They were listening to like fucking Good Charlotte or something, and I was like, even Sum 41 I'm just not that big on, or too. Yeah, and there's a couple other bands that are like on like or like certain bands, like their earlier stuff is always better than some of their later stuff, right? Like but that was the other thing too. I didn't want to be that famous guy. I didn't want to be overly famous. I wanted to be cool, but I didn't want to be overly cool. Like I wanted that blend. And I noticed that there was like this trend in music where punk rock would become really popular and then it would fade away, and then it would become really popular and then it would fade away, and it was like kind of like a wave, almost like a weird, And I realized, like, there's bands, like, you know, you're on the beach or whatever, and you're a starter band, you know, like, I remember seeing the Flatliners when they were young, and I was young too, like 13, 14, and in Caledon or something like that. And then, you know, they're like on the beach, and they went off and, you know, signed off to like Fat Records, or they went off and got bigger, you know, and they went off and made it into the sunset, like I like to say, you know, they went off and into the dust, right? And they went off out there, and then into the sea of musicians that are out there. And then they came back on shore a bit, and then came back. And there's always like a wave from popularity and mainstream to underground. And I was like, man, I noticed this, and I want to jump on that right wave. And I think I got lucky because, you know, like 10 or so years later, about 10 years later, I ended up being able to do that with certain generations of folk punk, because I've seen a big difference between the folk punk in the last maybe couple of years than there was maybe in the first part of 2010. And what the Washout meant to me back then, like I was saying, was really like about that wave, and about how I knew I was going into something that had already been done before. And now today, kind of looking back at it, it's like I felt comfortable in that. It was like it was like my Superman cape, you know, it was like my alias, it was like my ego. Like I could finally, I'm not a very confident person, but that was the one, being called the Washout or whatever. I remember, like, I wanted to be called the Washouts, like as a band. I wanted to start it as a band, but then I was like, not everybody, like, what if I don't do a band? You know, like, what happens if I'm not in a band? I still want to be the Washout. So I worked out in the end. And then, like, I tried to be in like a band or whatever. I tried to call it the Washout. It never worked, or Washouts. I mean, it never worked. And then the bass player from that band I played with for a while, and then I had another guitarist that I played with for a while, and just like nothing ever stuck. You know, like me and my buddy Mike, him on guitar, we got really close, and we did a lot of stuff, a lot of Against Me covers and stuff like that. But we never didn't get further than that, you know, and I wanted to take it to the next level, and I think he didn't really, and I was like, I gotta do this, because if I wait for you, then I'm not gonna get to where I gotta go. So I was like, all right, sorry man, I gotta go, you know. And I remember, like, I always invite him to shows and stuff like that. It never came, but like always wanted to, but just never the right time kind of came out in place. But for me, I just grew, and then I grew, and then I grew, and continued on. And like, I think the Washout for me today, it's nice because it's something that I can be comfortable with after all these years of doing what I've done and being who I am. I'm like, I can go into that. It's almost like, not necessarily like a state of mind, but it's like I can go into that. I can put that like leather jacket on. It sounds like a leather jacket, but it's like, you know, I can put that cape on. Like, I'm, you know, myself again, and I really feel like I haven't done myself enough justice yet, because I haven't had a proper release. I haven't had a proper album out. I haven't sold shirts like I want to. But I think that because I've taken so much time to actually grow as a person in the last couple of years, or last 2 years or year or so, I think that looking at it now, I have a better perspective on it than I did back then. So when I do release something, it is going to be proper. It's not just going to be, you know, it's not going to be as DIY as it's going to be something that's full on recorded, or like, that was the other thing too. Like, getting recordings is so hard for me anyway. It's like, I don't know, other people, I'm sure that, and I was always struggling in the studio. I just can't do studio stuff. You got to just record me when I'm doing what I do, and then it works out, right? Like, that's kind of, I think that one of the big things that I've kind of blessing and curse is that I feel like I've been really underestimated. You know, I've really underestimated myself. I've never given myself enough of a push. Like, I noticed, like, I was watching, you know, me and you were talking about all these different Joe Rogan episodes, and the one thing with the Dr. Phil episode that really, like, I don't really care for him too much, but one thing that caught me was that he was saying about how people that have that drive, you know, to succeed. And there was times, like I was saying, where I lived in the motel room, I just wrote music and I just played music all day. And I was like, I don't want to play video games because it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of my energy. I'm not going to get to where I'm going if I play video games. Now, and because I spent so long, like, shaping my craft, I got really comfortable. And then in the last little while, I've personally felt like I want to take that, I want to make it what it is, put that CD out, and then move on from there, and then make new stuff, and like be able to, like, because I think some of the last 2-3 songs I've written were really different. Like, I have a song I play on stage recently, and it's called Death Sentence, and it's about me being like, what I went through. And it's a different vibe. It's a different vibe than a lot of my folky punk stuff. So I think that what'll be interesting is if I do release something new, I don't think it's going to be as similar as maybe some of the other stuff I've played in the past.
So you wanted to talk about your girlfriend, your current girlfriend you're living with?
Yeah, oh god, she is fucking amazing. She's had to put up with so much shit. Oh my god, God bless her. Bless her big heart. I was going to say a little heart, but no, she's got a big heart. God bless her for putting up with me, because oh my god, like I have this song "Paint You Blue," and I mean I wrote it before I met her, but it just really applied to her and I so much, because like it's kind of about being jaded, like being so jaded that you're not really able to be the best you in a relationship. The line is, after everything that I've ever done, after everything I've said to you, if I wasn't painted shades of gray, I'd paint you blue. Kind of like, if I wasn't so jaded, I would be so much better to you. And I kind of really felt that, in the sense that, like, when she had met me, I was in recovery. And, it's not easy when you're first meeting someone to tell them, like, yeah, I'm a recovering drug addict. It's hard. So, like, she was really understanding. And the one thing that her and I both have is BPD. So, like, we're both a little bit intense at times. It's
no doubt.
It's disorder. It's an intense mental disorder. So, with that, we've learned how to cope, and we've been there for each other a lot. In terms of that, I've been there for her. Like, she was kind of between places. Like, her mom's house wasn't great for her, and she was on the couch at her sister's, who was wanting her to stay for too much longer, wanted her to kind of move along. And I came in at a time where I was like I met her at a time where I was like, you know what? I think I'd been back for about, it was in July of 2018. So I've been back in Ontario for probably about 8 months or so. And I was just like, you know what? I can't spend the rest of my life like missing somebody who doesn't miss me. Like my ex, she was fucking over me a long time ago, and there I am in Arthur, like still crying about her. And I was like, no. And then I'm at my mom's in near Hamilton, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna meet somebody from Hamilton, and I'm gonna get in a good, long-term, healthy relationship with somebody who I really care about. I'm gonna love them, and I'm gonna move out, and I'm gonna live happily ever after. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I just set my mind to it. And then, a couple dates with other people didn't really work. And then, I don't know, her and I met, and we just clicked, and we went out to go smoke some weed together on our first date, which was not far from our sisters. So everything just kind of clicked and worked. And then when, I remember we were talking, and she was like, oh, would you ever want to move out? Like, in the future, would you want to move out? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And then I don't know how it came about somewhere along the lines. She said something. There's something like, God, I wish she was in here to fucking tell me this. Right over there. No, but it was something about how, like, oh, what, you don't want to move in? You wouldn't want to move in with me? And I was like, no, like, I was trying to be coy, and I was trying to be like, oh, I don't want to move in yet. That's crazy. People like that, move in right away. That's crazy. And I'm like, secretly, like, yeah, I've done that. Like, telling you, like, I was fucking had somebody who was with them for every day for 4.5 months. Like, moving in with somebody on the second date, that's not too crazy for me.
Yeah.
So like, so I was like, yeah, of course, let's do this. And then she came to my dad's, and my dad was like, he was like, you're not having her. He's all angry at me, and I'm like, I'm getting her. Like, I don't care. Me and him were fighting about it. And I hitched out to Guelph, and she took the bus to Guelph, and then I hitchhiked with her back to Arthur. She'd never been hitchhiking before, and she was all scared and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, don't worry. She's like barely met me. She'd met me on like one date before, like, she's like, oh, I don't know, like. But anyways, I convinced her to go hitchhiking with me, and she loved it. We had a great time in Arthur and stuff like that. My dad got over it and stuff like that, and I just like, I fell for her that weekend. I really I knew she was really had a big heart, and she had been through a lot, and I had been through a lot, so it's kind of like I wanted to help her a bit, I wanted to be there for her, and through the course of things, she just started coming to my mom's, and she was staying on the weekends, or blah blah. She was just staying more often, and then we just lived together. We just moved in. It was really simple and casual. Like, I mean, it just felt natural. It felt really good because we just are just best friends. We get along so well. I mean, we fight. Actually, no, that's not true. We fight all the time and shit, but we get along a lot. And she was there through, when I first met her, I think I was at 55 or 60 mils of methadone. I wasn't really dropping that much, but because of her and my mom and environment here, when I was at my dad's, it was a little more isolating. Me and him don't get along very well. But coming out to where my mom is, me and my mom get along really well. With her being here, everything just clicked. So I was able to, she's a huge part of my recovery. It's probably my dad got me from BC to Ontario, but then it's from there, let me stay in Arthur and everything too. So that was amazing. But there was something that was kind of lacking. And then when I came to my mom's, I kind of found that with her and my mom, and now we've had this little happy old family kind of, so to speak, where my son comes over every couple of weekends, and her little sister comes over every couple of weekends, and it's just it made me feel so much more connected to family and with her. And I never really had that with anyone else. I don't she was the first girl that I've been with that my son would call a stepmom.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I had that before, and her and my son just are just so good together. They are just so good. They love each other so much, and just the bond that she's built with him, and my cat, or my mom, my family, the bond that she's built with all of us, and she's just such the most nice, caring fucking person. Oh god, I could be better. I definitely could be better, but I was able to take her out recently, for the weekend and stuff like that. And it was the first time in a long time where I was actually I spent so long telling her all these crazy stories about going and playing a show and then hitchhiking to the next town the next day, or just doing all this crazy stuff. So I was actually able to show her this is what I did for a long time. And this is, I was able to take her hitchhiking and take her, we went, played golf one night, and then we played Kitchener the next night. And, it just, being able to, for a song for her and a song for my son, just being able to thank them for getting to me where I am today. If it wasn't for her, it's not that I would have relapsed or anything like that, but I wouldn't have made it as far as I did. I wouldn't have gotten to the level of sobriety that I'm at, and God bless both my parents, because they drove every day my dad was driving me to the methadone clinic, and every week my mom drives me to the methadone clinic. So God bless them for that. And with her, she was just so patient with me. She was patient through everything. She was patient through me not having the energy. She's 24, I'm 30. She's 25. I'm turning 25. God, I'm bad with numbers.
Me too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's God, thank God I can remember our anniversary. I'd be real shit.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so, no, and our birthdays are, speaking of dates, our birthdays are 2 days apart, so, we're both Sagittarians, and I'm big in horoscopes, so I was thinking, there's certain signs I really don't want to be. Sagittarian just happened to be one of three, I think, that I was I think it was Aries, Sagittarian, and another one that I was if I meet a person that's like this, I mean, obviously if I met somebody that was different, that I would, I really liked that, I would have gone for it, but at the same time too, I was a little bit more cautious of who I wanted to be with, you know what I mean, what personality traits that I was kind of interested in. And with her, she was just this, like I said, this big ball of love and life. And every time I take her somewhere, she's always everybody loves her, And that's the same thing with my son too. So whenever I take them out, I'm always sweet. I can do this and be me, and it's nice being able to be a father and being able to. I'm not gonna say husband, but being in all. She's one of the longest relationships I've ever had. We've been together over a year and almost 6 months. So it's pretty big for me. So with that, I feel like I was saying to you before, how punk is dad, it definitely has been really punk is dad, since sobering up, because I'm getting to, punk is a lot of things, but I think family is definitely something that it really is. You know, it brings together friends and family, and it just brings people together like that. And I think that, like, getting older now, I've noticed that that's what's really important to me. You know, like friends, my family, and like girlfriend who's fucking amazing. She like, oh, you know what? We do like for Halloween. She is like the most artsy type person. She did like a pumpkin, like Jack Sparrow, or no, not Jack Sparrow, Jack Skellington. She did like a little pumpkin and stuff. So, yeah, she's the sweetest. And if it was, like I said, if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have gotten sober, because she has been so patient. Yeah.
There is one thing you said there about like punk can be a lot of things. There's a line, fucked if I remember where I could find this, but it's a guy, name was Dominic Mallory. His line that was, punk's not a genre of music, it's a mindset. That's how I look at it. Like, I see a lot of that mindset now in a lot of different like genres of music. Like, I've seen it in like certain hip hop groups. I've seen it in certain you pick a genre of music. If they're doing it themselves and they're doing it their way without any like help from a big major money source, it's punk. Like, you want to call it what it is. It's if they're out there saying fuck this and fuck that for like a cause or whatever, then it's like that's what it is. It's that spirit of rebellion, but it's also, you know, whatever you want to make it yourself too. But if you're doing it your own way without anyone's help but yourself, I think that is punk. That's the ethos right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, and that's the thing too. Like, I think that, you know, a lot of people don't associate necessarily punk rock with something like success, but I think punk rock is, those are the people that are willing to kind of. I think there was like a line in one of my older songs that was once called Freedom Fighters, now known as Punks and Anarchists, because I mean, that's, you know, back in the day, it was like, you know, we didn't, like, before there was punk rock, there was still protests.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like Woody Guthrie, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And with that, I think punk rock is that feeling of getting up and doing something and going for it. And, like, you're right. You have to do it. You have to do it. You have to want it. You know, you have to want it for yourself. And I think that those people that strive for that, I think that's very punk rock to get up and be like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care what the odds are. This is what I want to attain in life, and I'm going to go for it. I know that these punk rock chords have been done a million times, and I know these lyrics are fucking generic as a goddamn McDonald's Happy Meal. Like, you know, like, it's like as generic as it comes, but I'm going to put these two things together, and I'm going to call it my own, and that's going to be as punk as it gets, you know? Like,
fuck yeah.
I love
yeah.
And I love showing my girlfriend this, dude. Like, I love showing her all this, like, punk rock stuff, and I love, like, getting her absorbed into all these, like, different kind of cultures.
One question: do you have any like songs that you've wrote about her?
That's the thing that she hates me for. I haven't actually yet. She nags me about that.
It's hard.
I think that, yeah, it is, because that's the thing. Like, music, I said to her, you know, I said it's a lot easier to play a song I wrote like a couple of years ago than, like, you know, songs like Drunk Mike. I've been playing that since I was like 17. That's just something that, like, has carried. You know, it was like one of the songs that I wrote when I was young that really carried through later on in my career and really helped me get further, because that definitely was the song that, you know, like, I always have like depressing, like, sometimes I have some depressing stuff. Like, I play Drunk Mike right after I've played like a really depressing song, you know, so it brings the audience back up.
It's like one of those pickup songs.
Yeah, exactly, like a little pick me up. And I found with her, I was, because for so long I wasn't able to, like, I haven't been able to write her a song. I was like, what of my other songs, like, can I just dedicate to her? You know, can I, even though it was about somebody else at a different time, you know, music is what you make of it, in that sense, where, like, it might have meant that it might have meant something when I wrote it, but if I can take that same song and turn it into something, like, new in that sense, you know, like, it was about somebody else, but now I've made it about this person, and I think that was what I was able to do with Paint You Blue. That's something that, you know, like, in some ways I'm selfish, or some ways that I'm, you know, like, the flaws like that, right? Like, the things in me that aren't as good as they could be, and sometimes, like I was saying, like, you know, I mean, there's sometimes where I could be better. She I think going forward with her, I actually see like myself like, how do I explain it? Like sometimes I had a habit of going to a show with a girlfriend, and then the next show you see me at, I've got another girlfriend, and she's the one that has been the longevity there. Like there's like definitely somebody who I see myself building a full-on life with, and that's what we've been doing. Like together, we've been working on our mental health. We've been working on all these different things that we've got going, and we've been working together as like a team. Whereas in other relationships I've been in, there's been too much of a disconnect to kind of do that as a team. But this time around, it feels nice to be able to like build things from the ground up. And she wanted to move out of my mom's a little bit sooner, and I kind of got her to stay a little bit longer just because I was like, you know what, let's move out when we're fully at that point of being ready.
Yeah.
At that full of being able to say like I want to fully heal. I want to be off methadone. I want to be clean. I want to be like, I want to be in a better place, and then set myself up for success as opposed to like kind of rushing out and then setting myself up for failure. But I also think that when the time's right, she's going to be the one that is going to be perfect to move out with, and like go out and explain it, go on that next journey of my life after recovery.
Your partner, like an actual partner, not like.
That's what I call her too. I call her my partner a lot of the times. I call her my partner because like she is like my partner in crime, my partner in life. Like like if I'm sick, she's there to help me. If she's sick, I'm there to help her, because like that's the thing too with bonds and relationships. Like it's not always about whether or not you fight a lot or whether or not you're like super happy all the time. It's more so about like like the deep down stuff where you're when you're there for them when nobody else. But like sometimes you could be like the nicest guy in the world, but if you get in a fight with somebody around other, if you get in a fight with your significant other around a bunch of people, they're gonna think you're an asshole. So like not everybody always sees when you're bringing home flowers and stuff for no reason or whatever, and that's something that I've failed to do that in other relationships. So I've tried harder in this relationship to do things like flowers for no reasons, or just doing like little thoughtful things, because that's the other thing growing. Like a lot of my songs are about different girls or different breakups and stuff, but then you learn from all of those because that's part of growing, right? Every time you make a mistake, it's like looking back on it, there's like things I did in other relationships where I'm like, oh my god, I would never do that again, like I would never be that lazy, or I'd never be that like, I don't know, like short-tempered or something like that, just different things that I've like reflected on. And I think a lot of the times with Lily, she really brought that out in me about the side of me that actually cares, and that it wasn't easy always for other people to do that, because there's a lot of times where I was in relationships where I was really like caught up in things, and it was like, I've been kind of caught up in my like recovery or doing whatever, but it was at the time where I was able, because I was rebuilding myself, it was a good time to have somebody to rebuild myself with, like, and yes, I blah, blah, like, you have to build yourself, you have to do things for yourself, you have to be independent in a certain way, but it is okay to say, like, hey, I got myself to a point, it's not like I just started my recovery and then I met her, it was like I got far enough in my recovery, far enough with myself, where I was like, okay, I want somebody in my life now to take me to that next step. Yeah, because of her, I've been able to do that.
Well, I'm happy for you, man. You fucking, if anyone else I've heard, you deserve it. Like, seriously, I wish nothing for the best for the both of you, and I hope the next stage of this is just as adventurous as the first half, but all in the good way.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I really appreciate everything you've done for me.
Hey, man, I appreciate it just as much. Like, you're the first one, so, like, you're the first one who's actually sat down and wanted to do this, so I appreciate the fuck out of that.
Absolutely.
Perfect, man. I love to hear it.
Right.
Have a great night.
Cheers, man. Have a good night.
Oh, what a good fucking guy that guy is. I really enjoy him.